Welcome back to the Cold War, episode 299.
Yeah. Think we're gonna
We're
make
one
it?
off.
Yeah.
Let's just quit after this one.
You know what? Sounds good. Leave them hanging.
Yeah,
Leave
fuck
them
it.
hanging.
Yeah,
Leave on
leave 'em
top.
hanging.
Leave on top.
We're doing the Cuba thing, Fidel Castro thing. At the end of our last episode, he's landed on the island of Cuba with 82 guys. Nothing went to plan. The trucks and the food and the supplies that are supposed to be there aren't there because they arrived 2 days late.
Yeah.
They start walking towards the mountains. 3 days later, they get attacked, and 3 of his guys get killed. 22 get arrested, and so the rest get split up. And there's Fidel and 2 guys he's got with him,
Yeah.
and they're hiding under sugarcane leaves while they're being strafed.
Yeah.
And I said that the government of Fulgencio Batista announced to the media in Cuba and also in the United States and the world that Fidel Castro had been killed. Batista phoned the US ambassador,
who
was a close friend of his, and his wife. They used to play cards, canasta.
That's sweet.
To inform him that a vessel trying to land in eastern Cuba had been hit by the Cuban Air Force. Only a few men had survived. All of those had been arrested, and Fidel Castro and his brother had both been killed. United Press correspondent in Havana reported the story, and on December 3rd, 1956, the New York Times put it on its front page. Cuba wipes out invaders, leader is among 40 dead, read the headline. Later in the article, it says, papers on the bodies identified Fidel Castro as a major general, Mirko as a general, and Castro's younger brother as a captain.
Okay.
Of course, none of them were dead. No papers were found on the bodies.
Thank you.
It was all made up.
Are we really worried about papers?
And interestingly,
sorry, go ahead.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Interestingly, one of the books that I've got is a collection of articles and diary entries and reports from this period, and it actually has in it a memo, I guess, from one of the soldiers or one of the commanders of this operation back to headquarters, saying that they weren't sure if Castro was dead. They weren't sure what happened to him. They had no evidence of anything.
Yeah.
So the soldiers weren't falsely reporting to headquarters what had happened. They wrote an accurate report, but somewhere between command and the government and the media, it all got what?
Well, I think statistically
confabulated.
Yeah, but statistically speaking, they were probably hoping they were right. If he wasn't dead yet, he probably would be dead soon. Who knows? But the point is, I think maybe whoever made that decision, was it Batista? Was it someone under him? Probably felt pretty comfortable making that declaration. Again, he might just be dead somewhere out there. So again, but you and I have been doing this long enough to know when you have an enemy and an implacable enemy, no, don't do that. You don't trust, you verify. You don't count your chickens before they hatch, whatever saying you want to use. But yeah, no, you got to make. I want this guy's head. I want this guy's head on a platter. I want to see it. I want to skull fuck it, whatever. But yeah, no, you don't do shit like that because it's going to come back and blow up. It's going to look bad.
Well, the flip side,
right,
to that argument is that it's a propaganda tool. If you know that he's got people in Cuba that are hanging on him surviving because he's their leader,
it'll fall.
If they believe he's dead, maybe that all falls apart.
Or they don't try as hard, or they whatever. Yeah, that's a good point.
Yeah.
Yeah, take the wind out.
Maybe you try and take the wind out, then kill him, and then go, oh, well, he wasn't dead, now he is. Unfortunately, it can come back to bite you on the ass, and you just look incompetent, and that's in fact what happened this time around.
Yeah.
So Castro manages to regroup with his guys, and they keep fighting.
Yes.
On January 17th, about 6 weeks after they landed, At a tiny little place called La Plata up in the mountains, they had their next engagement with Batista's troops and won their first victory.
Yes.
At the time, he had 19 men he'd been able to put back together. Out of his 82,
Jesus.
6 weeks later,
Right.
he's got 19.
And he declared
Because they fled into the mountains.
Right.
And the mountains,
Yeah, it's tough.
they
were doing it tough.
not an easy place to find each other in.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah. Well,
Particularly when you got soldiers looking for you and recon planes looking
Yeah.
for you.
Well, all I want to say is that if he declared a victory was possible at 7 rifles, clearly 19 is more than he'll need. No, but just like we were joking about this, but this guy is literally, just because you're a revolutionary doesn't make you good at everything. He is learning as he goes, because he says something like, we had to learn how to fight. We had to learn how to engage. We had to learn tactics. We had to learn, and he didn't even know the mountains that well, so he had to learn the terrain as well. So he is learning as he's going. Don't get me wrong, he's losing people. People are dying because he doesn't know what he will know in the future, but he's not giving up. And that is the key to success more times than almost anything else.
True. Che Guevara's account of this first or second engagement, I guess, the first victory up at La Plata, reads like a movie script.
Right.
He says the rebels staked out a small army outpost and then captured 2 peasants who told them that the garrison had only about 15 soldiers.
Right.
They've got 19, so they've got better numbers.
Right.
And they told him that an unpopular foreman from a nearby plantation was due to arrive for a piss-up session with the soldiers.
Right.
So when the rebels saw this man approaching on top of his mule, already drunk,
Yeah.
one of them shouted, "Halt, in the name of the rural guard."
Right.
And the foreman replied with the password.
Brilliant.
So now the rebels have the password.
Brilliant. I love that.
It's like this is like something from Star Wars. Imagine Han Solo pulling this off with some dumb stormtroopers.
Yeah. We got a bad leak
So
here in the reactor.
Castro,
Sorry. Yeah. Just you trick
Yeah.
the enemy. They're not that bright, and they can't shoot that straight. Anyway, stormtroopers are stupid. Go ahead. Sorry.
Castro approached the guy, pretended to be an army officer who was returning from a reconnaissance mission in the mountains,
Right.
and started complaining about how inept the army were for not being able to destroy the guerrilla force already.
Yeah.
And then Castro started asking this guy about the locals and which ones they could trust. This guy, thinking that his army,
Right.
started telling them all the ones they could trust,
Dios mio.
which then obviously Fidel knew he couldn't trust, and started telling about which ones were troublemakers.
Aha.
Were the ones Fidel knew they'd probably get support.
Oh, this man's crap.
Che said that Fidel then convinced the man to accompany him to the garrison, and then they knocked on the door and gave him the password. But on the way there, the foreman was bragging to Fidel that he was wearing the shoes of a rebel that he had personally killed, and that he had killed 2 peasants without suffering any consequences, and how much he loved General Batista. He called him his General Batista. So when they reached the garrison, gave the password, Fidel had the foreman executed, and then they opened fire on the soldiers. They killed 2, wounded another 5, and confiscated all of their guns and ammunition and food and fuel and clothing.
Damn. Yeah. Do what you got to do to, because you can hide in the mountains all you want, but unless you have weapons, you're just a hermit. You need weapons, you need ammunition, and you need information. And Castro is gathering all of those. Damn.
5 days later, a platoon of paratroopers were marching in a column.
Right.
And Castro and his men, there's about 300 of them, Castro and his men were able to ambush them and had their second victory.
All right.
This time, they got their hands on a Garand semi-automatic rifle with
Right.
all of its rounds. The M1 Garand. Tell everyone about the M1, Ray, being a
That
World War II historian.
that is the gun. That gun can take a punishment and keep going. It is a tough. Yeah, it's been used a lot longer than maybe it should have, but it is a tough piece of equipment. You could bounce it around, scratch it up, whatever. It's going to get you through, and it's going to keep working. And when you've got those, and you've got plenty of ammunition, you're going to be able to cause your enemy a lot of problems. But it wasn't, like well, that's a different battle altogether. But no, this is a tough piece of equipment, and the more of these that he can get, the more effective his small band is going to be.
But explain to people the importance of the M1 in
Ooh,
World War II.
ooh, I don't know specifically. I know it was. Is that the one that the amount of bullets it can hold, or you could fire it? You could keep firing it. You didn't have to, reload, recock, whatever it's called. Yeah.
George Patton called it the greatest battle implement ever devised. World War II, most of the troops fighting against the Allies, the Axis troops, had single bolt action rifles.
Right.
Fire, pull the bolt back,
Yeah.
fire again, pull the bolt back. This was a semi-automatic. It was one of the first mass-produced semi-automatics, and the Americans had it, right? So you
Yeah.
could fire much more quickly than you could. So it was, the Axis caught up. Everyone else figured it out eventually, but
Yeah.
it really helped the Americans a lot. And it was used in Korea, and it was used in Vietnam, and it got replaced by the M14 eventually. But still today, they're turning up, being used in Afghanistan and places like that. M1s are still
Yeah.
getting around.
Because you could
They've
just
been in action now for,
yeah,
whatever, 80
keep
years.
keep pulling the trigger and it keeps firing. Yeah.
Yeah.
Let me know when I can broaden the war in Cuba. I know you're talking about specific actions that he's taking, and he's learning, and he's grabbing more prisoners, he's grabbing more weapons. But then just at some point, I just want to kind of zoom out a little bit.
You want to zoom out? What the
Yeah.
fuck does that mean?
Well, you'll find out in a minute. So please continue with your, he's having victories.
No, I was going to start talking about the journalism side of it now. I was
Oh,
going to go into that. So what do you want to talk about?
okay. Well, let me just do this real quick. So, so when he landed on the eastern side of the island, just like Marti had landed like 61 years earlier. So he sees himself as the new Marti. He's inspired by him, like most people in Cuba are. Excuse me. But in the one book was made a very good. Excuse me. The one book made a very good point about Castro was thinking about Jose Marti's tactics when he was fighting against oppression. However, Batista also knows about the General Weyler, who was the Spaniard who crushed the resistance. And so the more that Castro resists and the more success that he has that you were just talking about, the more extreme that Batista is going to feel like he has to be. So one, they start grabbing up all the peasants on the lower parts of the mountains, and they herd them into towns. Remember, many episodes ago, we were talking about how they would just take everybody off of their land and put them in the cities or put them into camps. Well, that to a degree is starting to happen now. They're starting to force the people in that area on the lower parts of the mountain out of their away from their farms and their homes, and they're putting them into towns to make sure that they can't join Castro, that they can't help him. So there's the one thing. But then you've got Baptista's got another arrow in his quiver, if you will. It's the white baseball cap guys. So he picks this one guy who is bloodthirsty, Roland Rosfera, who used to be a leftist supporter. Now he's a fascist. He makes himself and all of his men wear white baseball caps, and they're basically death squads. They're going through the area, and they're the Los Tigres, the tigers, and they are going through, and they're just if they even suspect that you are helping Castro directly or indirectly, there's a good chance everybody's going to be shot. There's a good chance that their homes and farms are going to be burned. So it's becoming to a degree a scorched earth policy. It's becoming very extreme. And again, the more Castro has success, the more the people have to suffer. And so it's a I don't know if there's a tipping point or whatever, but Castro was doing this for the people, but at the same time, the people in the area are suffering because of what Castro is doing. But again, Batista is the one who's calling the shots here. So on one hand, Castro's doing well, but on the other hand, the people are feeling the effects of what he's doing. So again, for both sides, it's just getting, it's just getting more gruesome, just like when the Spanish were in charge.
Yeah, I guess that's the nature of a civil war, right?
It just gets ugly. Yeah.
I remember when we were talking about Ho Chi Minh,
Mm-hmm.
this idea that he believed that if an entire generation of Vietnamese needed to sacrifice their lives
Yeah.
to get independence for their children and their grandchildren, then it was worth it.
That's
Right?
the price. Yeah.
That's the price.
Yeah.
Now, how do you put yourself in a position to make that decision that that's a price to pay?
Yeah. Yeah.
Like, how do you sign up for that? And put yourself in charge of the sacrifice of a generation is always interesting. I mean, I can't imagine having that level of confidence in myself.
Yeah. No.
But some guys do. Mind you, I haven't lived through that kind of oppression either. So,
Yeah.
if you've lived through these sorts of things, maybe it puts you in a different place, a different
Yeah. Desperate times.
stage of mind. I've lived a cushy white man, middle class life,
Yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah. No, we were not meant for civil war, guerrilla war. No, that's you don't want us on your team. No, that's not for us.
So to counter false reports of his death, Castro had members of the July 26th movement that were in the cities organizing phone chains. One person calls 10 people, says Fidel is still alive. Those 10 people call 10 people and say Fidel is still alive.
Right.
Spreading the word.
Yes.
Couldn't trust the media
No.
with Batista's censorship. So you go old school and just do
Phone tag.
They were also selling Amway products at the same time.
Yeah.
Just
Yeah.
buy some soap products and you can have a Mercedes.
Right.
He invented multi-level marketing. It was multi-level marketing
Yeah.
telling people that Fidel was still alive.
I cannot stress this enough.
And
this is not a pyramid scheme. It is not a pyramid scheme. It's a multi-level.
No.
Sorry.
Yeah. Like crypto. He invented crypto.
There we go. So
the greatest pyramid scheme of all time. But he also needed support for the mainstream media. Like, as I said earlier, Batista's propaganda campaign was to tell everyone that Fidel was dead to take the wind out of the sails of the resistance. Fidel needs to counter that by getting everyone to know that he's not only dead, but motherfucker's building an army.
yeah.
And he's coming
Yeah.
for Batista,
Gosh,
right?
it's
So it's his counter propaganda program.
Right.
But he needed support from the mainstream media to really get it out. And he couldn't trust the Cuban media, so he went for the American media.
Exactly.
Roughly a week after their second victory, he sent someone to Havana with instructions to find a journalist willing to come to the mountains of eastern Cuba to interview him in person.
Damn.
And the first person that his contacts reached out to was Ruby Hart Phillips, who we mentioned in an earlier episode. She was a New York Times correspondent who had been in Havana since the 1930s. I think she went with her husband, who was a New York Times correspondent.
Right.
And then he left and they separated and she stayed there and just took over his gig as the New York Times correspondent in Havana and stayed there, I think, for more or less the rest of her life.
Good for her. That sweet sugarcane. Yeah.
A guy called Felipe Pezos, who was the former director of Cuba's National Bank, but an enemy of Batista's, went to see her. And his retelling of it is hilarious. He says it was at an event or a party or some gathering at her house. And he said to her, "Can I have a quiet word with you?" And he they went into a little private room, and he whispered into her ear, Fidel Castro is still alive.
Mm.
And he didn't want anyone to hear. And she screamed out, Fidel Castro is still alive?
Jesus.
How do you know? He's like, shh, shh, bitch, keep your voice down.
She rated.
Slapped her a few times.
Why did I whisper to you now? Why, when I whispered to you, anyway, she just got excited. That's funny.
So he said he's alive and he wants a foreign correspondent to go and meet with him in the Sierra Mountains. And she wanted to go
Right.
herself. But after they talked about it a bit, they realized that an American woman going by herself up into the mountains would look very suspicious, particularly because she was known as a New York Times correspondent.
Right.
So instead, she reached back to headquarters and they sent a guy called Herbert Matthews, who was a very experienced journalist. He was in his late 50s at the time. He was born in 1900, so it's 1957. He's 57.
There we go. That's math.
And, well, maybe 56 because it's early in the year.
Right.
He and his wife arrived in Havana on February 9th, 1957, and waited for instructions.
Mm.
By the way, I've been reading a couple of his books. I read his articles that he wrote for the New York Times, and then I've read his book on Castro. And then he's also got a book on his life as a journalist, as a foreign correspondent. And it's a really good read. I highly recommend it if you're interested, particularly these guys that lived in, we've covered some of them before on the show. These journalists that lived and worked as far as correspondents in the late 19th, early 20th century that, old school would just go out and plant themselves in a foreign country and listen, keep their ears to the ground and tell stories. And they were in with diplomats and spies and, the gangsters, and they really knew the lay of the land. It's really, really great stuff. Very entertaining reading. He was one of those guys.
Yeah.
So, and this is a classic example. So this is obviously very dangerous. He turns up in the middle of a civil war, early stages of a civil war. He's going to go and interview the leader of whom he knows nothing.
Right.
The Batista government is painting Castro as a crazy evil terrorist. Batista himself is a crazy evil terrorist.
Hey.
So he's throwing himself and his wife into the middle of this. They posed as an American couple shopping for real estate.
Sure.
And arrived in an eastern coastal town. Sorry, let me go back a step. They arrive in Cuba on February 9th, 1957.
Right.
And they wait for instructions. On the 15th, they receive word that they would leave for eastern Cuba within hours. So they spend a week just as tourists, just hanging out, being inconspicuous. But there's going to be a whole bunch of checkpoints that they're going to have to go through, army checkpoints. So they need a cover story.
Mm.
So fortunately, this is like peak holiday season for Americans in Cuba. It's winter in America. People are getting the fuck out. They're going to Cuba.
Right.
Going to casinos, going to beaches. So they pose as a rich American couple looking for real estate on vacation. And they go to this eastern coastal town of Manzanillo, where a woman called Celia Sanchez was running the July 26th movement. Celia Sanchez is very, very famous in the Castro story. After the revolution, she becomes sort of one of his private secretary, or the secretary of the Politburo, basically. She's part of the leadership cadre. She's a woman who's a guerrilla soldier, fights through the whole revolution, very, very close to Fidel. Stays with him, very, very close to him.
Right.
Until she dies tragically young in, I think, 1967 from lung cancer.
Damn.
Um, but very, very famous to this day in Cuba. There's monuments and roads named after her and hospitals and everything. Like, she's a hero of the revolution over there.
Right.
But she never met Fidel at this stage. She was just part of the movement. She was very young.
Mm-hmm.
And she was going to escort them up into the mountains with a couple of other guerrillas that are young, and they're posting as like tourist guides or friends or whatever it
Right.
is.
Jeez.
And it's going to be Celia's first meeting with Fidel too when she gets up there. But it's not going to be easy. Matthews wrote in his New York Times article, to get from Havana to Oriente, more than 500 miles away, on time meant driving all night and the next morning so as to be ready Saturday afternoon to start for the Sierra. The plan worked out to get through the army's roadblocks in Oriente was as simple as it was effective. We took my wife along in the car as camouflage. Cuba is at the height of the tourist season, and nothing could have looked more innocent than a middle-aged couple of American tourists driving down to Cuba's most beautiful and fertile province with some young friends. The guard would take one look at my wife, hesitate a second, and wave us on with friendly smiles. If we were to be questioned, a story was prepared for them. If we were searched, the jig would be up. In that way, we reached the house of a sympathizer of Senor Castro outside the Sierra. There my wife was to stay amid warm hospitality and no questions asked. I got into the clothes I'd purchased in Havana for a fishing trip, warm for the cold night air of the mountains and dark for camouflage.
Okay. Does his wife know
So
that
he's
she's the bullet to shield?
camouflage?
Yeah. She,
Yeah,
honey, look, do you love
I think
me?
she does.
Yeah. Okay. Will you do something
Yeah.
for me? Okay. Yeah.
It-
We might get
Gotta
shot.
take a bullet
Yeah.
for me if you really love me. Yeah.
Anyway, yeah. So that's the ruse.
Fidel puts on a fresh uniform and a cap like Charles de Gaulle's, which I have a photo of
Right.
up here on my wall. I should take my camera and show you the photo I have on my wall. And he got a fresh box of cigars. And when Matthews arrived, he opened it and gave him his first pick of the cigars.
Nice.
And they talked for 3 hours.
Mm.
Matthews scribbled 7 pages of notes. And I love this story. At some point in the middle of the conversation, a rebel soldier came rushing in out of breath and interrupted them with a message for Fidel. We've succeeded in reaching the second column. Fidel reprimanded him for interrupting and then explained to Matthews that there were other columns of soldiers spread out across the mountains. And this soldier just returned from one of those. It was pure theater, completely made up, all of it, in order to give
Yeah.
the impression that they
Hey.
had way more soldiers than they
Yeah.
had. 19 or whatever I don't know exactly how many they had at this
Right.
stage, but it couldn't have been
Right.
more than that. And it worked. Matthews wrote that they had soldiers in groups or cells of 7 or 10, a few of 30 or 40. They probably had 20
Nice.
guys, but he's making it sounds
Nice.
like they have 100 or hundreds of guys
Yeah.
getting around.
Hey, propaganda is a part of war, right? So
So it reminds me of my favorite, Orson Welles, Winston Churchill story.
what's that?
You know this story?
I don't
I've
know.
probably told you this story. But Orson Welles tells this story. He's trying to remember the details. Okay. Castro. Fucking Orson Welles is staying at some hotel somewhere in, I don't know, fucking Africa or something. And this is in the 50s. And Churchill comes in and sits down at a table. And Orson goes over to him and says, lovely to see you, Prime Minister. Hello. They know each other. They greetings.
Right.
Oh, this I remember. Okay. Orson says, "Listen, I'm wondering if you can do me a favor. I'm about to meet with a rich fucking sheik or some rich guy. I'm trying to raise funding for my next film,
Right.
and it would really help me if he knows that I'm friends with you, and it would just really help build my career. Everyone, you're a hero to everyone. Everyone loves you.
Yeah.
It would really help you close the deal." And Churchill said, "I would be happy to, Mr. Wells." He goes, "Oh, thank you very much. Thank you very much, Mr. Churchill. Really appreciate that. Very lovely of you." Can't do a good Orson Welles. And he goes and sits down, and 10 minutes later, this rich guy comes, and he's a prince or a duke or some
Sure.
fucking thing, and
Sure.
he goes, "Oh, you see Churchill," and also goes, "Yes, yes, yes, yes." And then uh, at some point, Churchill looks over and catches their eyes, and he waves to Orson, and Orson's like, "Yes, yes, 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 okay," and just dismissing it. And then Churchill sends them over some drinks and something to the table, and he's like, "Oh, thank you, yeah, thank you, Winston. Yes, yes, thank you, thank you." And this guy that he's with is like, "Holy shit, Churchill knows you. He's sending you drinks. That's amazing."
Yeah. Yeah.
And and Churchill finishes his lunch, and he gets up and he bows to Orson.
Right.
And Orson just sort of, yes, yes,
Yeah.
yes. And then Churchill makes his way to the table,
Right.
and he goes, I'm sorry, but may I interrupt?" And Orson turns to him and goes, "God damn it, Churchill. How many times have I told you, don't interrupt me when I'm in the middle of a meeting?"
That's good. That's impressive. I'm impressed, and I know it was a setup. Do you know that Don Rickles did that to Frank Sinatra? Do you know that story?
Yeah, I've heard Rickles tell it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've heard
Yeah.
Rickles tell it.
That's
I've heard
hilarious.
10 different versions of that story.
That's
It's a
a
great story.
standard.
But I think Orson Welles' version, I think, is the original, but
Oh, right.
it could be Rickles. I
Yeah.
don't know.
Who knows? But
God damn it, Frank. Yeah.
trying to talk to this way. Oh my God! Now that
yeah.
is how you impress
It's
somebody.
it's such a fucking great template for a story, right?
Oh, I love that.
I first heard it told about Australia's billionaire who nearly bought the podcast network, but he died.
Right.
Kerry Packer. That was years ago, 30 years ago.
Oh,
Anyway,
that's good.
so it was a whole setup.
Right.
Castro set the whole thing up, and it's fucking great.
That's hilarious.
So Matthews goes, writes this story, and it goes out in the New York Times, and it's a 3-part story. It goes over 3 days on the front cover, New York Times. Castro alive. But Matthews, in the first article, describes Fidel as a bold leader. And on the last page of his notes, he writes, he has an enormous faith and self-confidence. All are with him. The first article was published on the 24th of February, 1957. Cuban rebel is visited in hideout. With it, he had a signed and dated photograph of Castro.
That's right. He's alive.
I've got some, I'm going to read from parts of the article. I'm not going to read the whole thing, but I copied and pasted some quotes here that I liked. He says, Raul Castro, Fidel's younger brother, slight and pleasant, came into the camp with others of the staff, and a few minutes later, Fidel himself strode in. Taking him, as one would at first, by physique and personality, this was quite a man. A powerful 6-footer, olive-skinned, full-faced, with a straggly beard. He was dressed in an olive-grey fatigue uniform and carried a rifle with a telescopic sight, of which he was very proud. It seems his men have something more than 50 of these. And he said, the soldiers feared them. We can pick them off at 1,000 yards with these guns, he said. Now, imagine them reading that.
Yeah.
And if they believe it,
Right. So, oh shit.
putting the fear of God into the soldiers, right?
Don't get near him. Yeah.
After some general conversation, we went to my blanket and sat down. Someone brought tomato juice ham sandwiches made with crackers and tins of coffee. In honor of the occasion, Senor Castro broke open a box of good Havana cigars, and for the next 3 hours we sat there while he talked. No one could talk above a whisper at any time. There were columns of government troops all around us, Senor Castro said, and their one hope was to catch him and his band. The personality of the man is overpowering. It was easy to see that his men adored him, and also to see why he has caught the imagination of the youth of Cuba all over the island. Here was an educated, dedicated fanatic, a man of ideals, of courage, and of remarkable qualities of leadership. Castro is a great talker. His brown eyes flash, his intense face is pushed close to the listener, and the whispering voice, as in a stage play, lends a vivid sense of drama. We have been fighting for 79 days now and are stronger than ever, Senor Castro said. The soldiers are fighting badly. Their morale is low and ours could not be higher. We are killing many, but when we take prisoners, they're never shot. We question them, talk kindly to them, take their arms and equipment, and then set them free. I know that they are always arrested afterward, and we heard some were shot as examples to the others, but they don't want to fight, and they don't know how to fight this kind of mountain warfare. We do. The Cuban people hear on the radio all about Algeria, but they've never hear a word about us or read a word thanks to the censorship. You will be the first to tell them. I have followers all over the island. All the best elements, especially all the youth, are with us. He sounds a bit like Trump here. All the best people, all the best people love us.
Right.
The Cuban people will stand anything but oppression. I asked him about the report that he was going to declare a revolutionary government in the Sierra. Not yet, he replied. The time is not ripe. I will make myself known at the opportune moment. It will have all the more effect for the delay. For now, everybody is talking about us. We are sure of ourselves. There is no hurry. Cuba is in a state of war, but Batista is hiding it. A dictatorship must show that it is omnipotent or it will fall. We are showing that it is impotent. The government, he said with some bitterness, is using arms furnished by the United States, not only against him, but against all the Cuban people. They have bazookas, mortars, machine guns, planes, and bombs, he said. But we are safe here in the Sierra. They must come and get us, and they cannot. Senor Castro speaks some English, but he preferred to talk in Spanish, which he did with extraordinary eloquence. He has a political mind rather than a military one. He has strong ideas of liberty, democracy, social justice, and the need to restore the Constitution to hold elections. He has strong ideas on economy too, but an economist would consider them weak. The 26th of July movement talks of nationalism, anti-colonialism, anti-imperialism. I asked Senor Castro about that. He answered, "You can be sure we have no animosity toward the United States and the American people. Above all," he said, "we are fighting for a democratic Cuba and an end to the dictatorship. We are not anti-military. That is why we let the soldier prisoners go. There is no hatred of the army as such, for we know the men are good, and so are many of the officers."
Fair and balanced, calm, rational, love of Cuba. That was a propaganda masterpiece that he put together.
So this, as I said, went out in 3 articles. The Cuban authorities denied the story immediately and categorically.
Of course.
One government official told the Times correspondent in Havana, which would have been Ruby Hart Phillips, that the interview was full of imaginary information embellished by Matthews' imagination. So, fake news.
Right.
That was what they said.
Yeah, until the photo was shown, which I don't know exactly when that was. Sorry, go ahead. Yeah.
Well, no, the photo went out in the first article.
Oh, okay. Oh, wow.
But
yeah,
they called that fake news as well. Batista's defense minister sent an official cable to the Times declaring that the opinion of the government, and I am sure of the Cuban public also, is that the interview and the adventures described by correspondent Matthews can be considered as a chapter in a fantastic novel. Mr. Matthews has not interviewed the pro-communist insurgent Fidel Castro. It is noted that Matthews published a photograph saying that it was of Castro. It seems strange that, having had an opportunity to penetrate the mountains and having had such an interview, Matthews did not have a photograph taken of himself with the pro-communist insurgent in order to provide proof of what he wrote. Why didn't he take a selfie? He's with Fidel Castro. He didn't take a selfie? Who's not going to take a selfie?
Right. Yeah.
So the next day, the Times published the Cuban government's accusation, followed by a statement by Matthews, and a large selfie of Matthews and Castro sitting side by side, with Matthews scribbling notes and Castro lighting a cigar.
God. Baptista's like, you got one fucking job, Army. You got one job. Bring me his head. Oh, it's embarrassing. But again, he's the dictator of Cuba, so he's still winning. Jeez.
Ruby Hart Phillips wrote an article for the New York Times saying that that edition with the photo sold out in Havana immediately the day it came out.
And they probably had it on hanging on their wall, that picture hanging on their wall, quietly, of course. But yeah, no.
Yeah.
So now Cuba knows that Castro's alive and that he's still fighting.
Yeah. I've got the New York Times article with the photo of Castro here. I'm going to try and blow it up. Mr. Matthews replies, I can't move this image around. Oh, that's better. The story about Fidel Castro surely speaks for itself. It is hard to believe that anyone reading it can have any doubts. So far as the photographs are concerned, there is one of Fidel Castro and myself, which was not clear enough for good newspaper reproduction, but which is very clear to the eye on a glossy print. But they published it anyway. And it's a very sort of, not a very good, high quality photo, unfortunately. But they're both smoking cigars, which is great. Knowing the doubts that would be cast on my story, I also took the precaution to get Fidel Castro to sign his name on a sheet of paper that I had, giving the place, Sierra Maestra, and the date, February 17th. This was reproduced in the final editions of the New York Times on Sunday. This edition does not go to Cuba, which gets an early airplane edition. Apparently, the Minister of Defense did not see it and did not realize the extent to which he had made himself incredible. The truth will always out, censorship or no censorship. Now, I hasten to add that when Fidel Castro died 50 years later, and 60 years later, and they wrote their obit on him, I had to spend 3 episodes breaking apart all of the untruths. Unfortunately, Herbert Matthews wasn't around to do the obit.
Yeah, unfortunate.
And he would have would have been greatly upset, I think, by the obit that his newspaper did on Fidel when he finally died in 2018, 2017, 2018, I think. Almost 60 years after this story came out.
Damn, yeah.
Yeah. So I think that's where we're going to wrap it up. That is where it's at. And the story gets good from here.